Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to the Auckland Unitarian Church, a place that has been home to people like us for 117 years. Unlike many other churches, we don't have a creed. Instead, we have principles of how we believe we should act together. The full list of principles is on our wall there. Today, I would like to highlight the first one, which says that we recognise the inherent worth of every person. And I would like to add that we also recognise the worth of people who are opposed to us. Anyway, we hope that you will share some of these goals and that we may share some of yours. We also welcome visitors. I like to welcome my wife Marion and her sister Geraldine, and welcome to a couple I think who are from the US. We're glad to see you here today, and we hope that you will join us in a cup of tea or coffee afterwards. Welcome. I've chosen for our opening words some of the words that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, starting from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verse 43. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbour and hate your enemies.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain to the righteous and the unrighteous." And a few verses later, he says, "Beware of practicing your piety before others in order to be seen by them, for then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give to charity, do not sound a trumpet as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. When you give to charity, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." In my chalice lighting words, I'd like to read a verse of the hymn that we'll be singing later. "It's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Better let its bright light show where you stand. For your light will set a path for those who are behind, and left the last bit. And hope will be born from that small flame in your hand." I'd like to speak today on the subject marching for love and marching for hate. It's fairly controversial ground I'm getting into, so I would like to invite people to make their own comments afterwards, because my own thinking has been turned around several times on this issue in the last 2 weeks. It started 2 weeks ago when I received an invitation to join a protest in favour of having non-racist immigration. The protest was going to be outside Jacinda Ardern's Mount Albert electorate office. I was invited to join this because other Unitarians are also on their mailing list, and I'm glad to say that I've just been put on the list. And I support non-racist immigration. So I went along to the Unite office, which is just a few blocks away from the Prime Minister's office, and the idea was that we would assemble there and then start marching down, because there was going to be another protest there, and we were protesting about the other protest. But my concern was triggered a little before I got there, because it said we're going to make this protest against the racist mob. And it doesn't say who this racist mob was, but I searched the internet about other protests and found that it was the National Front, a right-wing group who had a week earlier protested against the government's interest in signing a United Nations Pact on Immigration. They'd done a demonstration, I think it was at the ATS Centre the week before, and now they're going to protest against Jacinda Ardern's office, and they were going to protest because the Foreign Minister, Winston Peters, was the next day due to go to Africa to find out about a United Nations pact on migration. And the government at that stage was not sure whether to sign it. They wondered whether it might tie their hands too much as to which refugees they could welcome. So this group, United Front, didn't want migration at all. And on their website, where I read about their protest, it showed they clearly were racist. There's a picture of a lot of ugly, angry Africans bursting their way into New Zealand to ruin our way of life. So if that's not racist, I don't know what is. And so I'll be quite happy to go and oppose them. But it didn't happen. Only 15 people turned up. And the group that was calling the protest, which is called Love Aotearoa, Hate Racism, they said that's not enough. We might be outnumbered by the other group, and we might give them publicity in the media if they hear that there are two protest groups. They may show up, and if we don't show up at all, we won't give them oxygen. Well, I was a bit disappointed about that because I did want to go and protest, and I thought it'd be great. And I said I was once in a protest with only 15 people present outside the Auckland High Court, and we got huge media coverage from that, even though it was just 15. But anyway, I was a voice in the wind. There were two others there who raised questions about why they were doing this. But anyway, they decided not to go, and instead they stood all together holding banners outside this union office. And I must say I felt like I couldn't join in that protest because it was not really very clear what they were protesting against, and also that they're doing it in the wrong place. I would rather have had two protests at one place. Anyway, the Minister of Foreign Affairs did go there. He did. They did agree that the Immigration Pact was something we could join in, and so I was very pleased with that. But I wish that we had been there to support the idea. I think we would have probably won the day if we'd been demonstrating there in favour of immigration. The other group had been there against it. I think that would have been quite a good message of encouragement to the government. But I did support them in principle, and I was disappointed that it didn't come off. I've printed my sermon on two sides of the page, which is not a good idea. As it turned out, there was only one news agency which did cover the protest, and this reporter didn't say how many protesters were there, but he took a photo of it, and it looked like there were about 15 of them. So I think I think we would not have shouted them down, and they would not have shouted us down. But that's what got me thinking. Are we, when we are going on a demonstration, are we marching out of love or are we marching out of hatred? And I think there was a bit of both of them. But a second, even sadder case of mixed motives about protesting was over the Auckland Pride Parade. This has traditionally not been so much of a protest as a celebration of our gender diverse culture. And a number of us here have supported it. I've been going, I think, about 4 or 5 years, and a number from the Unitarian Church have gone, a number from Methodist Church, from the Ponsonby Baptists, and I think from All Saints Church in Ponsonby. So all churches around here on the route of the march, which starts in Three Lamps and ends about here. Well, that's what's usually done. But then again, love and hatred got mixed up together. The first that I knew that was something wrong with it, and probably first for most of us, was late in November when the organisers said that any gay or gender diverse police who took part in the protest would not be allowed to do it in uniform. I remember that it was only about 2 years earlier that the police had started attending in uniform, and at that time they were widely welcomed. So some gay people were very upset with the decision of this Pride Board. In particular, one of the former Pride organisers, Graham Gresham, who had founded the Pride Parade, and he said its future was now in jeopardy. He said that on November the 21st. He said one of the highlights of the parade for him was 2 years ago when the police were allowed to join the parade in uniform. He said that was one of the high points of the whole history of the march. I did some more homework on him because he seemed to be a good representative of that concern. And I found his Facebook page was full of this issue. And there was one of the articles which he had posted which said how extremists hijacked the Auckland Pride Board, railroaded a community and demolished our parade. So he was very, very concerned about it. And he was actually, I can't remember the name of his organisation, I think it was the Rainbow Trust. He was, and they pulled out their support. They have, in the past, they exist to provide support, financial support for people who want to join the march, and they were not going to support. They're not going to support it this year, but they were followed by numerous others. I'm trying to remember who they all were. There was Vodafone, the New Zealand Herald, which supported it, the Armed Forces, about 6 corporations, the BNZ, ANZ, I can't remember, there were about half a dozen of them, all pulled their support out. How did it happen to turn around? What changed the view of this Pride Board? Well, they had a new board chair, Sissy Rock. They had many new members. I believe there were about 300 new members joined in the last year, and they became the majority on the Pride Board. But the article says, this is the article on this former leader's website. The article says that the real reason for wanting to ban police uniforms is that it would ignite a switch to a more radical kind of pride. They said, this writer said, in 2018, they would find a Pride Board with a freshly appointed chair and members all too willing to help them obtain the match they needed to spark the fire that would destroy the kind of parade they wanted. And the match that sparked all the other was this issue of gay people marching, gay police marching in uniform. Then the article says the Rainbow community descended into civil war, major sponsors began to withdraw their support, and all this happened just in 4 weeks, starting November the 9th. The police announced that if their members could not march in uniform, they would not march at all, and I've got the list of all the others who pulled out. The Ponsonby Businessmen's Association, Rainbow Youth, and 2 members of the Pride Board pulled out as well. So that is the viewpoint of the old board, which welcomed police in uniform. But there were reasons they gave why, the new board gave reasons why they objected to police uniforms. They said a number of transgender people in particular are being badly treated by the police, and the uniform is a symbol of that fear. And the people who opposed the uniform said these trans people were one of the most oppressed groups, and others should take their side, not the side of the police. One of the police's diversity officers, Tracy Phillips, who favoured police participation, she admitted that some of these complaints were valid. She said there are police who are being hostile and bullying to trans people. So that was a huge concession to this new board. She was on the other side of the fence, but she said they had a point. The Green Party said they would still take part. Their spokesperson, Jan Logie, said there are wonderful people in the police working to eradicate transphobia and homophobia, but she said members of the gender diverse community still experience discrimination and violence from the police. Bridging those realities requires a deep listening that is not easy. I must say I was quite impressed with her stand. She is very much aware of both sides, but on balance, they have decided to go forward with to take part in it. The ACT Party said they had planned to enter a float, but won't now unless there are changes. I saw a news item about Jacinda Ardern being asked whether she would support the new kind of Pride Parade, and she said she would wait to see how it developed. That also seemed a reasonable position to take to me. I might have taken it myself and not commented and waited and saw, but I'd already spent about 2 weeks preparing the sermon and was not about to throw it away. My concerns became a little more definite when I checked another couple of issues. One was the Give a Little fundraising plan, set up on November the 23rd, just 2 weeks before a special meeting where there was going to be a motion of no confidence in the new board. The meeting was scheduled for December the 6th at the Pitt Street Methodist Church. But the Give a Little plan was very much one-sided. Their donation plan was to raise $30,000 in 2 weeks, and they achieved that goal, which is quite impressive, but it also, looks a bit manipulative because it covered two options. It said if the present board was retained and kept their no uniform policy, they would get the $30,000, but if the board was kicked out, or if they dropped their no uniform policy, the $30,000 would go to rainbow-friendly causes, yet to be defined. Their plan was to go through the list of all the people who donated the $30,000 and would give it back to those groups. So it sounds a very divisive thing, but they were taking a side they believed in. And they had another objection. The people who wanted to stop the police marching were also opposed to big business and to them supporting the parade. They said it was hypocritical because many of these firms, they said, were only joining it because of the publicity they would get. And another criticism was that these businesses were just there to get profits out of gay spending. And they said these big businesses were also trying to manipulate things by withdrawing their sponsorship when the parade didn't go the way they liked. Anyway, the Give a Little campaign itself is the clearest expression I could find of what these people believed who favoured the new kind of angry protest display. It was actually called, this is the Give a Little title on their site, Let's Replace Pride's Corporate Funding with Community Putea. Putea means financing. So you could argue that the Rainbow Committee had to raise funds because the corporates had withdrawn funds. But what did the donors have in mind? Well, I've been involved in a fundraising campaign myself, and many of the donors, when they give a little, they put a message saying why they're supporting it. And so I read through this Give a Little site, and there were 600 people who had signed it, and so I read all 600 of them. And about 100 of them wrote comments alongside their donations. One said, these companies never cared about queer liberation. They just want the pink dollar. Let's never let them back in. Another one said, looking forward to a pride that is less about advertising and more about community. Another one says, you made the right decision. The police and sponsors who are pulling out are showing how shallow their support of Takatapui and rainbow people really is. They will only support Pride if it enables them to rainbow wash themselves. Rainbow wash, I guess, is a take on whitewash. They won't face up to what they have caused. Another one said, I might join the Wellington Pride too, if we can get rid of the corporate dickheads who are only in it for performance purposes. And another one said, I'm donating to take Pride back to its roots and show that we never needed pink-washed companies to have a celebration. Another one says, full gay Pride, down with capitalism. So it looked from all those as though the real issue was not so much police being there, but corporates being there. This was the biggest group of objections. But there were a few that did raise the question of objecting to the police. One of them said, "What people forget is that the police uniform is a symbol of terror for some LGBTA people." Another one says, "Congratulations to the board. He's looking to a different pride and starting to repair relations so everyone can be included." And another one said, "Pride is political." And there were a few that really hated the police, but there were only a few. One said, "Pride in community, not corporates and pigs." Another one said, "F the police, F the New Zealand Defence Force, F the capitalists who are holding the parade to ransom." So it looks to me as though the main driving force was opposition to the parade being taken over by big business. I looked through the other issues about the parade, and they give a list of how much everybody should pay for if they go in. If you take part as in a rainbow group or an individual, it costs $200. If you're a charity or a government agency or a student group and so on, you pay $500. If you're a LGB business with up to 20 employees, you pay $750. If you are a non-LGB business, you pay $1,500. And if you're a commercial enterprise, you pay $5,500. Which you can see includes a protest against big business. But they also said that everybody who takes part in the parade must submit the details of their float, what its message is going to be, what kind of activity you're going to be, and if you don't, if it doesn't pass their standards, you won't be allowed to march. Now, I must say that any protest group has got a right to set conditions. They are obviously, anyone who's protesting can't accept people taking part who oppose their own plans, so they have a right to do that. But it made me wonder, would I want to attend? I wondered, when we attended as Unitarians and other churches, we marched under the banner, I think it was of the All Saints Church in Ponsonby. I'm not sure about that, but I tried to find them, to contact them, to find out whether they were still going ahead. And I couldn't get a reply. They were on holiday. And I know Betsy is our representative on this issue, and I tried to get hold of her, but she's in Honolulu and not taking emails. But I wonder, though, whether our parade, our contribution would be permitted. And I thought, if I went there, I might like to wear a peace shirt. That's what I just got as a Christmas present. I might like to wear a Unitarian T-shirt. How would I feel like going if I was not allowed to wear the shirt of my own choice? I think I would say no, but I don't really know whether they would or would not accept us, and that really puts me being sympathetic to those police who would only go if they were allowed to wear the uniform. If they were not allowed to wear the uniform, it's showing they're ashamed of being in the police force. Now, if you are going in a protest, you're not only supporting a cause, but you're also identifying yourself. If we have a group of Unitarians, as we may well do, we would want to identify ourselves as Unitarians, I'm sure. It's part of our pride. So I'm a little bit feeling we should not go, but I want to wait first until I've heard the other churches that are taking part. Now, I'd like to, having said my piece, I'd like to invite anybody else who would like to contribute a point of view to come forward and take the microphone. Would anyone like to? Scary subject, I know.
Just listening to what you said, by the sounds of it, there's been abuse on both sides. they're worried about police abusing transgenders. But then sounds like there's been a bit of abuse from the transgenders for the police. But the main thing is it's in the minority. It's not everyone doing this. It's on either side. It's only I imagine, a very low percentage. So, I would have gone on with the parade, even though they.
Hi. I can see both sides too, but I feel that the police should wear the uniform, and I understand the transgenders have been the history of their abuse that they have had from the police, but maybe the police walking in the parade will show to other police, hey, this is a new era, and this is what we do now. So that's the way I see it.
Because I used to work with Sissy Rock with the living wage, and know a lot about where she's coming from. My own feeling is that this isn't the police's parade. This is the rainbow community's parade, and they can set the terms. Whether I agree with them or not, it's their parade, and we should respect that. That's their journey. The other piece of it is police departments around the world. This isn't just a New Zealand or Auckland issue. It's been an issue in London, New York, California, and the police have chosen to walk with not in uniform, to build trust between themselves and the rainbow community. Whether they agreed with it or not, they saw it as an act of love, marching for love. And the other piece I have to say is, it seems to me there's been a numerous hooey over this topic between the police and the board. And by not listening to the rainbow community on this issue, it's almost a form of bullying, which kind of reinforces the concerns of those who were opposed to the uniform.
Thank you. Oh. Sorry.
All I got to say is it's nice to see that the rainbow community is now well enough established to have internal political divide.
The way I see this issue is that if we're seeking justice, then it's more important for us to make space for powerless people than for powerful people, and the trans community is powerless. The police are not powerless in any way. And also, the Pride Board is staying in relationship with the police, and the police have been invited to identify themselves, but just not to wear that uniform, which is seen by marginalised people as a symbol of oppression. So a police t-shirt, they're not asked to be anonymous, they're not asked to hide who they are or where they're from, they've just been asked to show that sensitivity to a marginalised community, and that's why I think we should still support the Pride in its current proposed form.
Good. For our closing words, I read some words that Marin gave me, which was used in the Methodist Mission Northern, written by Emily Colgan of Trinity College. I wish you discomfort at easy answers, half-truths and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. I wish you anger at injustice, oppression and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom and peace. I wish you tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, exclusion, rejection and war, so that you may reach out to comfort them and turn their pain into joy. I wish you enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world so that you can do what others claim cannot be done.